But my only question is that when Aaron Sickman sort of laid down the law here at the beginning of the season before that opener in St. Louis and said, hey, from now on, because FanDuel, Anthony's coming down, he's going to ask the first few questions. My definition of few is 2. But then you
Well, no, that
popped
would
in
be 2.
3, and now it's become the law that you ask the first 3.
Right, that's few. If it
Few
was
should be
2, 2 would be a couple.
Few is 2.
1 is 1, a couple is 2, a few is 3.
No, a few is not 3. Welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I'm coming to you from Milan, Italy. Anthony coming to you from Minnesota. And Anthony, I'm over here covering the Olympics, and man, it's been already a ton of stories that I'll be happy to share on this podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm not covering the Olympics, but I've watched a fair amount of it.
Yep. I was impressed that you said that you had to do it this early because you're going to the dentist. Usually it takes you. Didn't you go like 15 years between your last dentist appointment?
It was a couple appointments ago, but you'd actually probably find the story entertaining because you'd be able to ridicule me a little bit. The dentist that I visit, you have to make your appointments like months in advance, 6-7 months in advance. So the last time I went was last spring, maybe. And when I walked out the door, they make the schedule, but my appointment was in like November. Well, at that time, I didn't even know the Wild schedule. So I agreed to whatever the date was. Yep, that's fine. And then it was like the day before my appointment, I get a text saying, hey, reminder, you have an appointment here. And it's like, well, I'm in New York, so that's not going to work. And so as I was driving or walking or something when I called them and I said, hey, look, this doesn't work. So they said, well, what would work? And they make a new appointment. Perfect. So I showed up to the dentist yesterday and walked into the thing, and the lady says, your appointment is tomorrow. And I said, well, wait a second. I was pretty sure it was at 10 o'clock on the 9th. She said, nope, it's at 9 o'clock on the 10th. So I was off by a day because whenever I made the appointment, I didn't have like something to write with or a calendar to put it in at the time. And so, yeah, it's a big day for me. I've got a podcast, dentist appointment, and a golf simulator plan this morning.
Wow. And you sound tired. Did you have a big night last night?
No, not really. Although I did go to a cool place last night. It was a Wild season ticket holder event, and Wes Walls and I went to talk about the Wild with some Wild season ticket holders, a little Q&A session. But it was at a place called Earl Giles in Northeast Minneapolis that I had never heard of. And you go, it's a great, they apparently have good food. I didn't eat any of the food last night, but they don't have beer or wine. They only have cocktails, and it's a distillery. So they make their own vodka and gin. They bring in whiskey and tequila, but then you go in and make your own mixes, and they have every flavor that you can possibly imagine. They have little essence of each one of these, and you go through, you can try them in your cocktail, and then they'll make you a bottle of whatever mix you decided was your favorite mix. So I whipped up a couple for some cocktails for this weekend when family's in town, but it's a really cool spot. It's like a chemist lab when you go back in the back, and you play with them, you try them. Oh, no, I didn't really like that flavor, so I'm going to try something different. And I mean, we're talking about like every kind of floral flavor you can think of, every kind of citrus, every kind of, really not even just fruit. There were, you could have chocolate, you could have almond, you could have bark if you wanted to. And it was really cool, though, the process they go through. And I found out a couple of local restaurants, including our friends at Baltimore, go there to make some of their syrups for their
Oh,
cocktails.
cool. Very neat.
Yeah, I'd recommend it. It was a fun evening, and the Wild fans that were there loved it. They all, going through making up their own cocktails, and then they all left with a bottle for, I think it was mixes enough for 8 drinks or 8 cocktails or something for each of them. But it's a fun night, always fun just to kind of chat with Wild fans. And as you can imagine right now, the same 4 questions I think are asked no matter where you go about the Minnesota Wild. But right now the excitement level and energy level is high for Wild hockey, and it was a fun night.
Yeah, and we'll talk a lot about the Olympics coming up, but obviously a couple big wins in a row over the Montreal Canadiens and the Nashville Predators. They enter the Olympic break with the second most points in the league. I didn't watch the game, Anthony, just because it was 2 a.m. here, but the Nashville game absolutely wild when I woke up and saw the change in momentum, the blown leads, the early Matt Boldy hat trick, and then Boldy obviously setting up Jared Spurgeon's overtime winner. Um, Crazy game. I can't wait to get to hear what you thought about the game. I will tell you, and I think this is a good thing. So I was shooting the breeze with Brock Faber a couple days ago here in Milan, and he was telling me that, I said to him, I'm like, you guys are gobbling up points. You're 8-1-1 in your last 10. You're catching up to Colorado. Like, is it do you think a negative that you guys are sort of halting momentum here and being at the break? And he said it was quite the opposite. He said they're not happy the way that they're playing. The games have been weird. They're going to overtime too much. There are a lot of guys, I'm sure banged up, but they haven't been overly delighted with their games. It's a sign of a good team that they're getting points. But he said that he actually thinks that these 2-3 weeks off will actually be a really good thing for the team. What say you?
Well, I agree with his assessment of the team's game. I think it's been loose. And we've talked about it a little bit on this show. I forgot we hadn't talked since that Nashville game. That, to me, it had a feel of a game for a team that was just, they were on break already.
Yeah.
And they were, okay, we got to find a way to get through this game. But it had that kind of a feel where it was a team that had one foot out the door already. Now, to their credit, as has been the case so often, they've found ways to win these games. But I think they've been giving up too many chances. They've been giving up too many goals. The game has been it's been lacking the structure you have to be good in the playoffs. And it's interesting because that's one of the questions that I continue to get asked is, boy, bad time to take a break. And I said, boy, I kind of see it as just the opposite. I think it was a team that had an unbelievable grind to the schedule in the first half. And I know most other teams were not that different, but when you're living the Wild schedule, it certainly felt like a team that just needed a mental break, if anything. The 12 out of the last 21 went to overtime, and most of those went to overtime, in my opinion, because they just gave up too much. They've been able to score their way out of trouble, but that's not going to work when you get to the postseason against Dallas and Colorado. It works against the Nashville Predators now. It works against Montreal, who I know they're going to be a playoff team in all likelihood, but they're not the kind of rugged playoff team the Wild are going to face. Their game's going to have to change, I think, coming out of the break. And we can talk more about what's ahead for them coming out of the break. But the other thing that I think is interesting is this isn't a break for half of the team.
Yeah.
And, for those guys to go and get the opportunity to play in the Olympics is great. And to play against the best, I think, will be good, assuming that everybody comes out healthy. But it's not a break for half of the Wild team, whereas you look at some of the other teams and they're sending 2 guys or 3 guys or 4 guys. Most of their team is getting a break to be able to go and get healthy, to get rest, to mentally clear their brains. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing is, let's say some of these teams, let's say the U.S. and Sweden both make it into the Final Four. Well, these guys are going to come back with like a day to get themselves reacclimated and back up to full. Their rest is going to be about a day before the season starts.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and it's I know the Wild are saying all the right things, especially John Hines, that he's taking the opposite tack, that they're going to come back ready to play because while these other guys are lounging on a beach in Cabo and Cancun and things like that. Most of these wild players will be playing against the best on the best and come back primed and still in
which
hockey
might
mode.
be right.
Yeah.
It might be right. We'll see. But I just think you've got guys. I mean, we've watched, the grind and how hard guys like Eriksson Ek play. And for him to, that he's going to come out of this. He's not going to go over there and coast. I mean, he's going to come. I don't know if he's going to get punched in the face as often over there as he does in the NHL, but he's going to be in the battle. He's going to be in the grind night after night after night. And, this is a guy whose body might be as in need of rest as anybody.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if you could see, and maybe our producer Davide could see, but there's a frozen picture of me on the screen that seems to be my profile picture of an exasperated Russo. And it is one hilarious picture. And I don't know when it was taking. I don't know if it was in the middle of one of your soliloquies, but I don't know.
I have no idea.
If there was a picture, I mean, if for the people that are listening at home, if there was a picture to epitomize my usual attitude, this picture is it.
Your picture's moving on my screen, but we're using a new technology today, and I don't see myself.
I just don't know when this was taking.
Screen.
It was somehow captured. It's I don't know. It's my personality, that's for sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Wild, the Olympics, things like that, and then I got a bunch of really cool stories to tell you. Let's combo Wild and Olympics here. So I'm here also covering women's hockey, and the first couple of days of the tournament, there's a norovirus going around that really hit Team Finland to the point that their game against Canada was postponed and rescheduled for February 12th. And then the next night, somebody on Switzerland got norovirus and was isolated and wasn't able to play. I think we all know who it is. All you have to do is look at the lineup for Switzerland. You could figure it out. And so when this happened, we're coming up with stories and we're writing. And so the one thing I wanted to do was find out if, because this thing is in the village, if Team USA and Team Canada and Team Sweden and if they were thinking of maybe taking their men's athletes and pulling them out of the village and putting them into the NHLPA hotel, because there is that option here. So at the same time, I text Bill Guerin asking the question at the same time that I asked Doug Armstrong the question. So the relative Team USA and Team Canada GMs. Well, little do I know, I sent them the exact same question. They're actually together at the same time. And Doug Armstrong sends me a picture back of Guerin. Guerin sends me a picture back of Doug Armstrong. So right away, I'm mortified that they know that I'm texting each of them at the exact same time. So to lighten the mood, I just asked them if they had orchestrated a trade for Robert Thomas yet. And neither of them even replied to that one. But it is kind of interesting. This is what you and I have been saying for a little bit here, right? Is that the one thing about the Olympics here is you got 10 GMs that are NHL GMs that are actually over here between Canada and USA, and there's really nothing for them to do but to get together and talk and hang out. And here you got the Team USA and Team Canada GM on the first night that they are in Milan hanging out together. And I'm not trying to start a rumor that the Wild are going to trade for Robert Thomas, but this is kind of what I was talking about, is that, right away they're together and they're talking shop at some point, all these GMs here.
Well, of course they are. And it was the one Vinny's thought that we had for this podcast was related to that. And he said, is this going to end up being like the day of free agency, where the moment that free agency opens, guys miraculously have a deal done in the first 35 seconds of free agency when the trade ban is lifted coming out of the Olympics? Are all these guys going to be working the deals while the Olympic break is going on? And as soon as they're legal, all of a sudden we get a flurry. Now, I don't think it's going to be like free agency, but that all of these guys, because of how little time there is coming out of the Olympic break before the trade deadline, these guys are absolutely going to be talking about this. And as you know, it's a lot different and a lot easier. I mean, name the scenario. It's always easier to have those conversations when they're casual and in person, as you happen to see somebody at a rink, as opposed to making a phone call or sending a text message or whatever that case might be. So I don't doubt for a minute that these GMs that are there will, I mean, think about it just in a normal workplace, and how I can't tell you how many people I've talked to since we went through the whole COVID-19 thing, and people started working from home, when people will say the world around the workplace is different. You don't have the sharing of ideas because you just happen to walk by each other in the hallway. Now it's all done virtually. Well, this is the same kind of thing. When you just happen to be sitting around the same breakfast table or having coffee in the same town or grabbing a beer in the same town, compared to being halfway across the country and sending each other a text message, it's just different. And you might be more creative when you come up with a deal that might work. And I'm sure that, we've talked about Billy a lot of times on this show, and I don't doubt for a minute that he's exploring every potential option when it comes to deals. And nobody's waiting until the trade ban is lifted to make those conversations.
Absolutely. And another one that is clearly going on, and they were in the stands together for half hour talking yesterday, is Billy Guerin and Chris Drury, the GM of the New York Rangers. And clearly Vincent Trocheck's available. Clearly it's somebody the Wild, I think, have interest in, if maybe other things don't come together. But what was really fascinating yesterday, before that conversation that I witnessed in the stands took place, Anthony, is that so Team USA did their team picture on the ice. And then the way it does, and they did this at the Four Nations too, all of a sudden they have kind of mini pictures. So like the Hughes brothers took pictures together. The Tkachuk brothers took pictures together. The goalie coaches took pictures together. The former United States National Team Development Program guys took pictures together. Guys from teammates, whether it was Hannafin and Eichel and players like them. So the Minnesota Wild picture happens. And so John Hines, Chris Kelleher, Billy Guerin get together with John Worley, Joel Boyd, Travis Green, and then the three players, right? Quinn Hughes, Brock Faber, and Matt Boldy. Well, as a joke, with a big laugh on his face, Vincent Trocheck started skating over to the Minnesota Wild picture like he should be in it. And, everybody got a kick out of it. So what it did show you is, as he faked to go into this picture, that it was a lighthearted moment, but that he is well aware that the Wild are a potential trade destination for him. I have confirmed that the Wild are not on his no trade list. And I think that he is almost fully expecting that there's a chance that he winds up with Faber and Quinn Hughes and Matt Boldy as his teammate by the March 6th deadline.
Well, I mean, players are always aware. They can say whatever they want about that they're not listening to the rumors, but that when players' names come up, somebody, if it even isn't legitimately them, somebody in their circle, their friends, their family, they're hearing about it and asking about it. So players always know where the rumors are, and sometimes I'm sure they dismiss it where, like, if they know deep down, well, that team's on my no trade list, so the rumors are ludicrous because I know I can't go there. But I think it's obvious that goes back to what we were just talking about with Billy Guerin, where I know that there are a lot of names that we've discussed on this show, and I hate talking about the rumors just because, and the speculation, because I don't have any inside knowledge to it. But it's clear that everybody can do the math. The Wild need a center. Rangers are out of it. They've made their intentions clear that they're looking to the future, not to the present. I just think there are other guys that probably are more attractive to the Wild right now, whether it be a talent level, a fit level, or just a contract that allows them a little bit longer of a window that fits a little better with the guys they have right now, where you start to look at the core for the Minnesota Wild. They're all locked up for the next 3 or 4 years. So this isn't a team that is we have to win this spring with the players we have. This is a team that knows they've got Matt Boldy, Brock Faber, Kirill Kaprizov, Philip Gustafson, Joel Eriksson Ek, all locked up for the next 3 or 4 years. Hope to add Quinn Hughes to that list this summer. So I'm sure they're looking at these deals. And if with a team that's got limited trade assets, if you're going to give away some of the remaining assets in your bucket, you want to get a guy that can help you keep that window, or that can be a part of that window for all 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, no doubt.
Possible.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so we'll see where this goes. There's no doubt, Bill Guerin is without a doubt going to make some sort of move. It's just a matter of what and what he gives up. But look, it's just been cool to see. I mean, even just I walk into the Winter House the other day, which is their USA Hockey House. It's a joint venture with figure skating and speed skating. And the reason why is usually you just have a USA Hockey House and a Sweden Hockey House and blah, 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 blah. But the reason that this is unique, Anthony, is because the Olympics, those are the only three sports going on in Milan. Everything else is outside. So, like, curling, skiing, snowboarding, all that is up in the mountains, hours and hours away. So basically the three, national bodies got together and have their own house here. So I go in there the other day and, I had to go there, Anthony, because the Starbucks is the title sponsor. So I knew I would get some free Starbucks. So of course I go there. And first person I run into is Brian Bottano. And, obviously a figure skating legend, never met him before. And he's got the Bottano's Lounge there. And he's slinging drinks behind the bar and teaching people how to make cocktails. So I interviewed with him. And then this is like at 10 a.m. Then they had a wine tasting, which is right up my alley. Then I go over to the Starbucks barista. They got a personal barista there that's curating all these different drinks that I'd never had before. But then I go into the restaurant portion, and you got Bill Zito, Chris Drury, Stan Bowman, Bill Guerin, Pat Kelleher, Chris Kelleher having breakfast with Bonnie Blair, the speed skating legend. And how cool is that? That in one section of this place you see Brian Bottano, then you see Bonnie Blair. They're having all sorts of different honors here in the next couple weeks of teams and Olympians being honored in this place, and it's just a really cool hospitality area where athletes can hang out with their families and donors and things like that.
Yeah, it sounds great, and I think that's what's one of the cool things about the Olympics. I think from a viewer standpoint, it's the only time in 4 years that I'll watch a downhill skiing race or a biathlon event. That I watched one of those the other night. And I think it's cool when you watch those other events, but I also think, like, when you hear some of the athletes talk about the fact that walking in the opening ceremonies and getting a chance to visit with the other athletes that are there representing their country, you get lost sometimes in the little bubble of NHL hockey, that this is all about NHL players going to participate. And the hockey tournament is going to be one of the most, I'm sure, one of the most watched, most anticipated elements of this of the entire Olympics. But some of these other events are fun to watch too. And the couples curling event that I watched last couple days, and watched the team from the U.S., which happens to be from Duluth, go up against the Italians twice yesterday. Played them in the last round of pool play or whatever they call it to qualify for the semis. Then came from behind to beat them in the semifinals. And I find myself captivated by these events that you otherwise wouldn't probably even stop your channel as you were rolling past on your guide. Oh, there's a downhill skiing match. Well, I'll keep going and see if there's a golf tournament on somewhere else. But when it's the Olympics, you stop and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It is what also has been kind of cool is just getting to go. Like, unfortunately, I'm probably not going to get to go to any other events. Like I said, most of the stuff is out of town. I hope to at some point see some figure skating or speed skating. But what was really neat was going to the opening ceremonies the other day, Anthony, and it was awesome. And I was at the opening ceremony in 2010. And I thought Vancouver did a tremendous job, but this was perfect. A lot of times you need almost like a giant manual to really interpret what the heck's going on out there. But even I, as dumb as I am, was able to figure out what was going on. The show was awesome. The effects were incredible. Hearing the Italian national anthem, Anthony, by this singer it gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I saw that part on television. I loved it. I thought the show was great. I thought the march of athletes, I always think is amazing. It did make me think back to, how much smaller the world feels right now, just because, back then I remember that you'd see these athletes from other countries, and maybe I just was too young or oblivious to it, but you had no idea who they were. And now you probably have a little bit better idea of who some of the people are on some of the other teams. And there are more world championships and those kind of things, and athletes that live or train in the United States, but then participate in the Olympics for their home country. And so there's a little bit more of that, where it used to be like when the Finns would walk in, that there was this mystique of here's Team Finland, and you had no idea if they were good, bad, or otherwise at any sport. And I do think it's fun to watch, and it's cool to watch people that are that proud and passionate to represent their countries.
Yeah, without a doubt. So the women's rink, where most of the women's games have been played, is out in Row, which is kind of a trek to get to. And they've taken this exhibition hall and literally built a rink in there. I mean, it's totally constructed stands, constructed ice. It's crazy how they were able to do it. And so 2 times while I was there, you could actually see me in the Getty pictures. Vice President J.D. Vance arrived with Marco Rubio and their families, sat right in front of me, and with about 30 Secret Service agents around them. And I was beyond distracted, not by Vance or Rubio, but by these Secret Service agents. I mean, they are like, I was just like watching these guys and women, and just like, they are hardcore. But just watching the way that they conduct themselves. But then I had like 3 or 4 of these guys right in front of me, and I'm looking down at them as they're on their phones and they're texting with people. And you realize that they're just like us. Like, I'm watching this one guy, he's texting with people, and he's got like heart emojis and laughing emojis and eye rolls. And it's just like, you never think that, some sort of, professional Secret Service agent that, you think they don't have a sense of humor, and all of a sudden you realize they're actually human beings.
So you weren't intimidated by just the earplugs in and the sunglasses on?
There was one guy, I'm telling you, man. There's this guy that was like standing over me. I thought he was going to kill me. Like, every time I got up, I basically asked him for permission. And he was hardcore. Bald. I mean, I've actually Googled like JD Vance about 5 different times in the last couple of days, and he is right. This same Secret Service agent is on his side everywhere he's ever been.
I'm sure he follows you on Twitter, so exactly. He probably is.
But it really was like watching these guys. It was fascinating. But I'll tell you one thing, I probably definitely shouldn't say this, but the one thing I will say is you realize how soft security sometimes is. Like my editor and I go into this rink that day, and we put our bags right through the x-ray machine, and the person on the other side of the x-ray machine is not even looking as our bags are going through. And next thing you know, an hour and a half later, we're the ones that are 3 feet from the Vice President of the United States, and our bags were really never checked. And you just realize how soft sometimes security can be around. Like, nothing is, you think that they're protected all the time. They're not.
Well, yeah, I think sometimes it's probably an overreaction, but boy, in a situation like this, where you're at the Olympics, you would think it would be a little more rigid. Maybe the Italians are just really trusting.
Yeah, exactly. So the other cool thing is, so we're here at the Olympics, and we have a bunch of writers and editors at our hotel, and we also have Terry Ann, who's the manager of essentially the Athletic that puts everything together. I mean, she is like everything you need. She is the person that comes together. She's done 5 or 6 Olympics. Used to work at the New York Times. Then we have a lot of New York Times reporters here, and editors and photographers. So we probably, between the mountains and Milan, we have 50 some odd people. So at our hotel, we have like Steve Buckley, who's one of our Boston columnists. We have Marcus Thompson, who's just an elite columnist from San Francisco. Basically is Golden State Warriors, and does everything. He's covering figure skating. Britt, one of our baseball writers here, she's doing everything from speed skating to hockey to figure skating. And then we have just all sorts of people here. But the one thing watching all these people work, Anthony, is it really inspires you to do a good job. Like these are the best of the best that we have at the Athletic. And then we obviously have our 5 hockey writers here, including me. But it just watching like Marcus Thompson cover figure skating, which is not his cup of tea, and seeing how well of good of a job he does. This is like one of those things. One, you realize how fortunate it is that you are to have this job, but how cool it is to be part of this team that we have at the Athletic.
Well, I haven't read a lot of the stories about what's going on over there, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, some of the most talented writers in the country or in North America are a part of your team with the Athletic. But I think I always feel like, yeah, in fact, last night, one of the questions that I got asked at the season ticket holder event was just the same kind of question I've had before about my career path. And it turned out after the fact, this woman came up and she said that I had covered her friends in high school hockey way back when. And as you talk about it, you think of I think about the number of different sports I've covered where half of the battle for me was learning the rules of the sport, but I wanted to do justice to the game itself. So I learned the rules, whether it was soccer or volleyball or wrestling, or as I've told the ringette story before. And I know it's the same for you. Like when you go over there, granted it's the same sport, but before you went to cover women's hockey, you went to go watch the series between the U.S. and Canada to get ready so that you were well versed on what was happening with those two teams before you went over to cover the Olympics. And I think that's what separates I don't want to say the good from the bad, but it separates the best from the rest when it comes to writing or to, in my case, broadcasting, where if you're going to call a game, if you're going to do the game, then understand that just because you don't understand it and you don't follow it for a living doesn't mean that it's any less important to the athletes involved. And to do it justice, you really have to dive in and you really have to be willing to admit what you don't know, be willing to ask a bunch of questions and then invest the time to immerse yourself in it so that when something special happens in that event, something special happens at the Olympics or at that game or in that moment, that you're able to capture it and do justice to just how special it was.
Yeah, well said. We'll do this. We'll take a quick break and be right back on Worst Seats in the House.
Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt. That's onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today.
At Royal Credit Union, we believe in banking with purpose. That's why we're here for you and your community with people-first service, local support, and all the accounts and loans you need to help reach your financial goals. As a not-for-profit cooperative, everything we do benefits the people and communities we serve, because Royal isn't just where you bank, it's where you belong. Experience the Royal Credit Union difference and learn more at rcu.org/royal support. Insured by NCUA. Loans subject to credit approval. Equal credit opportunity.
Hey, it's Russo, and you know how much I love Aquarius Home Services and the amazing Connecticut water treatment system that they put in my home. But Aquarius is amazing for so many other reasons. One call and your problem is solved for virtually everything. They are experts in plumbing, whether that's water heaters or garbage disposals, leaky faucets and drains. They're experts in electrical, whether it's rewiring or flickering lights or smoke and carbon monoxide detectors, new panels, anything. And hello, it's winter in Minnesota. And you know they are experts in furnaces, whether that's a repair or installing a new system. I have been using Aquarius Home Services for years. I love them. They're the best in the home service industry. Right now, you can enjoy $98 off any repair. That's $98 off any repair. Go to AquariusHomeservices.com to set it up. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended. And don't forget to mention that Russo sent you. Back here, Worst Seats in the House. Mike Russo, Anthony LaPanta. Last segment of the show. Anthony's got a dentist appointment, hopefully a root canal to get to. Anthony, you mentioned the women's hockey, U.S.-Canada tonight. Should be a really good game. Unfortunately, Marie-Philippe Poulin, who is still regarded as one of the best players in the world, or the best player in the world, she got hurt last night against Czechia. We'll see if she plays tonight. My guess is, since we all know that U.S. and Canada are going to be in the gold medal game, that even if she remotely has a chance to play tonight, that they would protect her and not play her until that game. But we'll see. I was not at that rink yesterday. I was covering U.S. Switzerland, excuse me. But this U.S. team, you just mentioned how I went out to the rivalry series and covered 4 games. They have been unreal. They've given up 1 goal in the tournament right now, a couple shutouts in 3 games. Tonight's their last game of the preliminary round. And they are so deep. It is absolutely incredible. So John Wroblewski, who is the coach that coached the program for a long time, coached the Hughes brothers, all 3 of them, coached Matt Boldy over there, Brock Faber for a cup of coffee, Jake Sanderson. So he's got his fingerprints on both the women's team, who he obviously coaches, and a lot of the guys on the men's team. He's just done a tremendous job for this. So we'll see that game tonight is sort of the appetizer to what we all think is the gold medal game. And then the men's tournament start tomorrow, starting with Sweden. Philip Gustafsson probably getting the nets for Sweden in their game, I believe, against Italy. I'll tell you what's really interesting about Gus is, first of all, he is excited about being here. But I'm listening to him yesterday, and I can tell. So the Swedish reporter is talking to him, and I'm listening, and obviously I barely understand anything that's being said. But then all of a sudden, I kind of recognize Eriksson Ek, and the Swedish guy is talking to Philip Gustafsson in Swedish, and then all of a sudden, I hear the words "punchable face" from the Swedish reporter, and Gustafsson just looks at me and just starts laughing hysterically. And then I just look at him, I'm like, so apparently punchable face is the same in Swedish as it is in English. And clearly they were talking about Joel Eriksson Ek having a punchable face. So it was kind of funny seeing Gus and having this conversation with the Swedish reporter yesterday.
Well, it'll be interesting to see just how that plays out in the tournament. But I think to me, one of the things that's most interesting, and I asked John Hines this a little bit in the post-game scrum in Nashville, was that now that the game's over, do you immediately shift into that these guys are now my opponents? And like by the time you get on the bus to head out, are you already thinking like, hey, all right, now Joel Eriksson Ek and Philip Gustafsson are the guys I'm trying to beat rather than the guys I'm pulling for? And I think that'll be one of the most interesting things to watch in this tournament is, what happens when Joel Eriksson Ek and Brock Faber are battling for position in front of the net in front of the U.S. goal? And just are you even aware that that's your teammate that you're now fighting for? Might be for a medal, might be just for positioning, whatever it is. And does that immediately go out the window, or are you at least aware of the fact that, well, I'm not going to cross-check this guy in the middle of the back because he's my teammate again in 2 weeks? I think some of those things will be fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And, it is funny, as you just mentioned, John Hines joked the other day that we're already in Gus's head because Gus was joking that he was trying to change things up in practices to fool guys like Boldy and Quinn Hughes and Nico Sturm and Faber and all these teammates that are going to be in the tournament. So you're right, it's going to be really cool. Matt Boldy looks like he's the one that I think has the chance to really have a breakout here and get into the sort of conversation as being one of the best players in the league. We know how good he is. 32 goals, coming off a hat trick. Ty has the most goals of any American right now in the Olympics. And he is going to get one heck of an opportunity to start this tournament. It looks like he's going to be on a line with Austin Matthews and Jake Gensel, potentially definitely on the power play, was practicing on the penalty kill yesterday as well. Anthony Faber's playing with Jacob Slavin, Quinn Hughes playing with Charlie McAvoy, and it looks like the U.S. team really has a chance to make some noise in this tourney.
Well, they sure should. I mean, they're one of, I don't know what, maybe 4 teams that legitimately feels like they'd have a chance to win. And it's not quite the foregone conclusion on the men's side. And part of it's just the bracketing. Like, you don't know how it's going to play out. There's a real good chance that you end up with, even if U.S. and Canada are the best 2 teams in this tournament, there's no guarantee they wind up meeting in the final game. Could well be a semifinal matchup based on what happens in pool play. But I think when you look at it, it isn't deeper than those top 4. That one of those top 4 is going to win this tournament. And there's a chance for some others to maybe sneak into the medal position. But I think anybody looking at the rosters going in knows that the gold medal is going to come out of that big 4. and probably the gold and silver are going to come out of those big four.
You're right. And there, to your point too, there is no guarantee that the U.S. and Canada will meet. Obviously that depends on what happens in the medal round, just because they're in a different group. Where Canada and the U.S. and women's are going to meet tonight, and most likely in the gold medal game. In the
there was one of the questions that we got asked last night that wasn't. I hadn't really given it a lot of thought. I thought about it a little bit after I left. When they just asked me about how good the Russian team would be if they were in this tournament, and I hadn't given a ton of thought to what their lineup would look like, but boy, as I did and started running through my mind, I mean, think about the formidable, let's say, top 6 forwards they would have, and think about the goaltending decision they would have had. Like one of Vasilevsky, Bobrovsky, Sorokin. I mean, one of those guys probably would have been left out of this off the Olympic roster. I mean, that's they. I don't know defensively if they'd have been at the same level as U.S. and Canada, but the up front and in goal, they certainly would have been. It's for the player standpoint, it's unfortunate those guys don't get an opportunity to compete, and it would have just added another potential winner to this tournament field.
Absolutely. Did Vinny have any other thoughts, or should I go right into Twitter questions?
No, that was his only thought, but you never really answered it. What do you think it'll be like coming out of this break? Do you think we'll have a flurry almost immediately as the curtain goes up on the rest of it? Because part of the challenge going in is there were still so many teams teetering on the edge of whether or not they were going to become sellers, and sell. It might be too broad a term this year, because I think there will be some teams that might be, let's say, tweakers more than sellers, where, I'll make a deal where I give away a guy that's got less term on his contract, but I'm not ready to just say that means we're giving up on a pursuit of a playoff spot. The league is so balanced right now, from in each conference, like the 5th or 6th team down to about the 10th team that all have a shot to get in.
Yeah, I think that there will be a flurry coming out. I do think, because there are just not a ton of guys out there, that I think that teams are going to try to get a jump on other people. I do think the Robert Thomas being available has sort of slowed things down for some of these other centers, but there's just not elite centers. And that's why, deep down, I really think that if the Wild are going to trade Jesper Wallstedt, that's going to be a summer move, because I just don't even think that you'd want to make that move for Robert Thomas now, just in case. As somebody asked here, somebody asked about Austin Matthews, and just in case, all of a sudden a Matthews became available this summer, or if the Wild decided to go wing and a Brady Tkachuk became available. I just don't think you want to waste that bullet now for a team that doesn't have a lot of bullets anymore, because they've traded so many assets in the last couple of years. But from the Minnesota Wild standpoint, I could see them, having something in the hopper here. One thing we talked about last week that I think I've mentioned a couple times, and I've misspoke, is I think we talked about the Marty Hansel trade and how it came right after the Olympic break. And that trade freeze. It actually was not the Olympics. It was their first year that they had the bye week. And so it was right before the bye week that Jonathan Toews lit him up for 5 points. And then it was just a week later, they came out of the bye week and they were allowed to make a trade, and they made a trade right away. So that's one thing I did want to correct myself. But I do think that with the amount of conversations that Bill Guerin's having and that other GMs around the league are having, I do think coming out of the break, depending on the health of different teams, that there will be a flurry of trades.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I also think it's like a first domino to fall kind of thing, where as soon as one trade happens, then I think everything else falls into place. The point you make about the Wild is exactly what I was getting at earlier, where I just think when you have, and I don't want to make it sound like the Wild are up against it because of limited assets, but they've probably got one major deal ahead of them in the next, let's say, 18 months. And I just think right now, if it's not the perfect fit, that's okay, because this window isn't just this spring with this club. It's really over the next 3 or 4 years. So I think if you're going to make that deal where you're willing to give away one of those major assets, that's got to be your one big shot. And you would kick yourself for a long time if you gave away one of those major assets for the best fit right now, or a temporary fix kind of guy, and then not able to make the bigger move when it's available.
Yeah, a lot of pressure on Bill Guerin right now because he has given away a lot of assets in the last couple of years. And the reality is that you can make the best trade out there and still lose to Dallas in the first round. That's the scary thing about being in this division, is that you know that you could, for the amount of assets they're giving up, that you're still going to have to face Dallas potentially in round 1 and Colorado potentially in round 2. So we'll see, though. Wild are on fire. Colorado has been very, very average since the calendar flipped to 2026, and suddenly the Wild, even though they've played 2 more games than the Avalanche, are only 5 points behind them. Let's ask some Twitter questions, and then we'll wrap up the show in about 10 minutes, Anthony. Alaskan Pipeline, great coverage this season. The Wild lead the league with 36 points in overtime. Are those OT habits concerning? It feels like true contenders get it done in regulation and don't rely on 3-on-3. Playoffs are a 5-on-5 grind, where the Wild seem to lack consistency. Your thoughts, Anthony, on that question, which I hear from lots of fans lately.
Well, I don't think it's a team that's relying on overtime. I think it's a team, though, that has found ways to make sure they get points even when they're not on top of their game. And, I mean, you could say if all of those games were decided 5-on-5 in overtime, like playoff games are going to be, who's to say they wouldn't still won 50% of those games? So I don't think it's a team that's saying, hey, the only way we can win is if we get to 3-on-3. It's just a team that's found a way to avoid losing close games in regulation. And that's a reality of the way standings are determined right now in the NHL. So why not make sure that you take advantage of it and find ways to get points in close games, no matter what the situation?
I'm with you, Anthony, and I'm always Mr. Positive. But I'm not concerned about this one iota. I know fans seem to be talking about the regulation wins and all that stuff. I mean, last year they had a ton of regulation wins, and what good did it do them, right? I mean, the reality is that this team is finding ways to get points. They've been a really, really good team for the most part. Now they just got to shore things up defensively again and get better goaltending. But right now, the fact that this team just continues to find ways to win games, I think we're really starting to nitpick if we're taking a team that has the second most points in the NHL, that any of 30 other teams would give anything to trade places with them for, and start to worry about, like, oh my God, they're not winning in 60 minutes.
Well, it'd be different if you were the team chasing in the standings, where you had to win in regulation because you couldn't afford to let a point go to the opponent. But that's not the case right now. The case right now is they're piling up points. And look, there have been teams over the last few years, teams that the Wild have been chasing, that you've said, well, they just keep getting to overtime before they lose and makes it impossible. All those other teams that are in the middle of the pack in the West, each night when they see Minnesota go to overtime again, they're thinking, my God, there's at least a point in the standings for the team we're chasing. It's disheartening. So it would be different if it was a team that was going into games, and I mean, imagine what the scenario would be, like starting third periods and just playing for a tie to say, let's see if we can win in overtime. And that's not what they're doing. They just happen to be going into extra sessions a lot lately. And I think a lot of it has to do with it. Defensively, they haven't been quite tight enough, but that's a different problem than to say that a team can't win in regulation.
Yep. Johnson from Wisconsin goes, how much does Trocheck making the Olympic squad grease the wheels of a trade to the Wild? How expensive do you believe he will be, considering he has term on his deal? I would hate to give up Stramel and a first, but fear Billy Guerin will be enamored with Vinny to avoid such a price. I mean, the reality is that is going to be the price. Usually that is going to be a price for a player like that. The Wild don't have a lot of blue chip prospects left, so Stramel's probably the number one guy if you don't want to give up Urov or Wallstedt. And it probably would cost a first, which is now a 2027 first, unless they get one back in another capacity. And the question is Vinny the right guy for that? The one thing I'll say about Vinny, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, Anthony, is he has always been an underrated player. He has the ability to score. He's great in the faceoff circle. He can kill penalties. The question is, he's had a down year. Is it a down year because he's in New York? Is it a down year because he's banged up? He did have that wrist injury, I believe, at the start of the year. What do you think, regardless of price, what do you think of Vincent Trocheck?
Well, I like him as a player, and he'd certainly help, but I think it's all about price, because if the price is anything higher than what you're talking about right now, I think I'd hold off and wait for a bigger deal in the future.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I get, the irony of everybody being worried about giving up Charlie Stramel is that the majority of Wild fans considered him a bust a year ago. And this guy just continues to play well, has been outstanding for Michigan State, and now Wild fans have, just like they did with Marco Rossi, suddenly we can't give up Charlie Stramel. I'm with you. I'm worried about the number of assets the Wild are giving up. I also think that I'm really intrigued by Charlie Stramel, his ability to play the middle, his size. But they've put themselves in win now mode, and they've traded a bunch of assets for Quinn Hughes to win now and try to extend them. And so at that point, what it tells you is that this team is just not in a position where they can continue to, just not give up prospects. They're going to have to continue to do that. Somebody asked about Tage Thompson. Buffalo right now is on fire. Here, this will be the final question of the show, Anthony. Christopher Cash. Best hotels to stay at when visiting for a weekend at home games, March 14th and 15th, as well as must-hit restaurants in the Twin Cities. We would prefer to be able to walk to the arena. So if they walk to the arena, probably the Courtyard Marriott, the new Courtyard Marriott right across the street is probably the best bet, or the St. Paul Hotel. Restaurants in the Twin Cities that you absolutely love.
Well, if you're trying to walk to the rink, it's got to be St. Paul. So check out La Grolla. That'd be my recommendation.
Yeah, La Grolla is awesome. St. Paul Grill is awesome. Tom Reed's you got to check out. If it's not in there, Minneapolis, we love Portana. What else do we love? Bar La Grassa.
Well, La Grassa. Get out of downtown and go to Baltimore for the best steaks in town.
Yeah, Butcher's Tail.
But if you're downtown, I'd go La Grassa.
Yeah. Nighthawk wants to know what I want to know. Why is LaPanta now asking all the post-game questions of the coach?
Well, we've been moving chairs around all year with our shows, with our pre and post-game shows being on the road. And so I'm doing my part. I go downstairs because Kevin Gorg's our pregame and postgame analyst on road games. So I go downstairs and ask the first few questions of the coach each night.
Now, I just want to say my definition, and we're going to wrap up the show now, Anthony, because I know you got to get a root canal. But we hope. But my only question is that when Aaron Sickman sort of laid down the law here at the beginning of the season before that opener in St. Louis and said, hey, from now on, because FanDuel, Anthony's coming down, he's going to ask the first few questions. My definition of few is 2. But then you popped in 3, and now it's become the law that you ask the first 3.
Right, that's few. If it was 2 would be a couple.
Few is 2.
1 is 1, a couple is 2, a few is 3.
No, a few is not 3. And now it's become like a thing where then I ask the 4th question, it's usually taking a shot at you. Like my favorite one in Seattle when you're like, I thought the best player on the ice was Philip Gustafson. And I'm like, well, I thought the best player on the ice was Brock Faber. I think even John Hines got a kick out of that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was very entertaining for him, but
it was entertaining for me.
Whatever makes it the show more about you is, I'm sure, what everybody's thinking.
Please. You're the one that's asking 3 questions when it should be a few, which is 2. That is the show. Thanks to this is the Worst Seats in the House with Anthony LaPanta and Michael Russo. Anthony, I don't think you're doing a live show this month. Is that the rule? Is that what we've decided?
No, I don't think so. Out of the 3-week Olympic break, I found that I had 2 nights off. So we couldn't get one scheduled.
So you had a few nights off.
I had just a couple.
All right. Thanks to our sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Onyx Maps, and Royal Credit Union. Talk to you next week, Anthony.
Sounds good. Thanks.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world